Hello and welcome to episode 76 of the AutoTalk Weekly Wrap. I'm Rich Edwards and today I am joined solely by Mr. Mustang Santa himself, Graham McDonald. How are you this morning, Graham?
Exceptional, thank you, Richard, out in the wilds of West Auckland. It's already getting built up out there. We can't even drive out of our dealership right now. The traffic's so bad. It's Christmas.
Yes.
God bless
It was a weird one yesterday, in that normally around this time of year, I was down in Auckland, we're doing some work. We had my little company Christmas party in the morning, and then we went out and did some filming with the guys at Transnet for Wallbox, and came back into Auckland, dropped off my camera guy, and was sitting there in Mount Albert, and I needed to go over and pick up my daughter and wife, or maybe go help my daughter and wife. They had another car over there, in Glendowie via Sylvia Park. And I looked at it and thought, no, I'm not doing that. It's going to take an hour to get to Glendowie via Sylvia Park. We're all of about 15 kilometers. Oh, God, I'm going to be stuck forever. I might as well head home. This is going to be awful. I'm not going to get anywhere. It's going to be, I'll just head home. They can go do their own thing, and I'll start sitting in the 3-hour trip north. Because this time of year, sometimes getting out of town can be pretty darn crazy.
Yeah, today is the kicker. Yep.
Jumped in the car, set the nav, and there was a little bit of traffic on the nav, but by the time I got going, there was nothing. Like, it was like driving home at not in peak hour. It was easy. Nothing. Northern was clear. Crazy. Didn't even get caught up at the link between the Northwestern and the Northern. It was just unusual. If you go anywhere near Sylvia Park, you're screwed.
So we did some runs out to compliance in Penrose yesterday from West Auckland, and that was moderate ugliness. It's really busy out here on Central Park Drive and Lincoln Road. It actually is a parking lot, and I can look out my window right now. It's a parking lot right now.
I think if you go anywhere near where there's a mall, basically anywhere near there's a mall, you're screwed. But the out of town traffic doesn't seem to have hit yet.
There's no mall around here, trust me. At least not around
There's
Central
a mall
Park
at the
Drive,
at the end of Central Park Drive, basically.
This is traffic going the other direction. Maybe they're just leaving the mall early in the morning. I don't know. Yeah. Either way, I can tell you the choke points have been really bad, but I don't know where they're going because the retail spend, everyone's saying, is down. Everyone's sort of thinking, well, it'll lift any day now. Any day comes, and it's like, well, it might lift the next day. And I'm talking about retail in general, apart from the people that sell food. Just general, trading apparently has been quite subdued. So I don't know where everyone's going, but they're certainly parked outside my street right now. That's for sure.
Yeah. No, well, who knows? Anyway, I'm out of town now, so it doesn't really matter. I don't care.
Yeah,
Auckland suckers can be where you are.
Yay for you.
Yeah. Everyone's going to come up and annoy us next. Right now, we did promise something for today's show. So, what have you got to drink, Graham? Let's get a analysis of your.
This is embarrassing because this is what was in the staff fridge.
For a Japanese used car lot, that seems pretty on brand.
So the story behind that, I actually found out this morning because I tried to buy some Lion Red because I thought, well, I'm in West Auckland, right? Why not? To the site. And believe it or not, in West Auckland, there's only one place that you can buy, but you can buy single cans of Lion Red. So in keeping of the spirit, cheers. Asahi Super Dry for the win. What have you got?
So I have got I'm on keto, guys. I'm sorry. I've got a Pals, one of those New Zealand boozy soda-y things that.
Yes, yeah.
They're not bad. And hang on, ready for the ASMR?
ASMR. Oh, love that sound. Never gets old.
Into the microphone. How'd that sound through the headphones, Graham?
Oh, it sounded nice and crisp and clean. I'm wishing my Asahi came from a can because this is, of course, bottled in Australia or China. It's not the real deal. You've got to buy the Asahi in the nice big tall silver can. But yes. Here we are.
Now, in case we find the moment, I've got a shot of Sailor Jerry's as well.
I'm in a car dealership in West Auckland, and there might be a 6-pack of Cody's at the back somewhere I can go and get, but nothing fancy. There probably is some Cody's at the back. What am I saying? None of that fancy wine stuff here for you, Sonny.
Yes. I want to know if that's
Cheers.
true. I want to know if that is true. If someone passes by, call out them at some stage and go, "Is there any Cody's out the back?"
Oh, I know
Yeah.
there's Cody's at the back.
If a can of Cody's appears, I'll shoot that. Okay.
There is. Right. There's Cody's at the bottom of the service bay. And what we're doing there, I do not know. Anyway, look, cheers everyone to 2023.
Exactly. Right, so let's run through things. Now, we are going to do the top 10 stories of the year, but first, there has actually been some news this week, so we should discuss that. And let me just fly that along and bring that up. Where are we?
Not quite a slow news.
There we go. First story of the year, Gillard moving from distribution to retail. Sco New Zealand General Manager Rodney Gillard has announced he is stepping down from the role on December 22nd, calling time on a 27-year career in automotive distribution, which also including management roles at Nissan New Zealand and Volkswagen New Zealand. Gillard has accepted the role of General Manager of Tristram European West Auckland, which holds the Volkswagen franchise for the local region. He admits that there is a small irony in the career move, which will begin in early 2024. After many years of telling retailers how to do it, I now get to show us all how it is done. Putting his money where his mouth is. Good to see. We'll still see him around. He is a very strong operator, and be fun to see what he can do in retail land. Right next door to you, I believe.
I was going to say, it's a small irony. If I could throw my empty bottle of Asahi out the window right now and probably hit their fence. So yes, they are next door neighbours. And to be fair, we do have a Volkswagen product sourced from his distribution channel sitting in the car park of the fleet here as well. So yes, welcome to the family.
Yes. And conversely to that, Sco New Zealand appoints Brown as new general manager. European Motor Distributors has appointed Alex Brown as the new general manager for its Sco New Zealand operation. Brown was most recently EMD National Parts Manager and was appointed the National Service Manager for the Audi brand in January 2019. Prior to EMD, Brown had management roles for Infiniti in Hong Kong, as well as Ford Motor Company of New Zealand and Hyundai Motors New Zealand. He began his automotive management career as a service manager for John Andrew Ford and Mazda in 2010. So a good appointment there. Good to see someone coming from within. Continental Motorrad opens a Wellington dealership. Continental Motorrad has opened a new dedicated BMW dealership in the Kaiwharawhara Wellington area. 5 months after the launch of Continental Motorrad in Auckland, a second BMW hub selling cars and motorbikes, as well as a new Wellington mini garage, has been created at the Continental BMW site just north of Wellington CBD. The new showroom is completely dedicated to the BMW Motorrad brand, and the region's motorcycling community can expect the new dealership to live up to the tagline, "Make life a ride."
Boy, that guy wrote that, didn't
he? They're inviting the local motorcycling community to drop in to see what Continental Motorrad offers, etc. All part of the Sime Derby group and so forth. An interesting thing there, point to touch on, that motorcycle dealers do really well and car dealers don't, and that is customer community involvement. Back in my younger days, when I did ride a motorbike, there was a dealership on the shore that we would go to and just randomly once or 2 nights a week just hang out there, and they were great at like fostering that kind of community, which meant, of course, you'd be there and you'd be like, oh yeah, getting a bit low. So we'll do a deal on that. I think it was a great thing for business. I'm not sure necessarily if car dealers are quite as good at it. I think some of the new ones maybe do their best around sports sponsorship, charity days, that kind of stuff. Used car guys.
Well, it depends what it is. I mean, don't forget, a car by and large is a necessity. It's an appliance for most people, as much as we like to talk them up. Bikes, it's a lifestyle. For a lot of people, it's a lifestyle choice. They've sort of bought into it. They're, fat aging, middle-aged men like me that decided to go and have the whole biker lifestyle as well. So it does fit in quite nicely with a bit more of a, should we say, community and, I suppose, owner presence, I suppose, in terms of events they run. Cars, you buy the car, you drive the car, you trade the car in, you buy another car. For most people, that's exactly how it is. They're soulless, they're passionless.
Yeah. Now, I see in the bottom of my screen here, as you may do, David, a forehead. And if he can hear us, maybe he can lower his camera down a little bit. There we go.
Ooh, we have a forehead.
Ooh. And we'll bring in our resident Santa Claus, David Crawford.
I've been called many things, but not often Santa Claus.
Well, you've got the slightly lighter coloured beard, and
yes, grow some more. grow some more, and you'll be set to go.
Yeah. Sorry, I was late. We've had all the builders and everybody packed up Tuesday night, so I thought that's it until the new year. And then the plumber rings last night and says, "Oh, let's do some stuff tomorrow." So I've been busy out the back.
Is he connecting a toilet?
You know, that's the ultimate New Zealand excuse. You know, you're late for anything, you always I had the builders, and everyone in New Zealand goes, I understand.
It's interesting what you were saying about them all packing out, and that I live in a beach suburb, as everyone knows, a beach town, and everyone wants their batches done for Christmas. And so you can see today, literally 2 houses down the road from here, they're all finishing up. They're loading the trailers full of all the trash. I suspect sometimes they're not actually finished. They're just packing everything out so that the people can use their half-finished batches over the next few weeks. It's the time of it.
Yeah, so we're doing what we call future-proofing the sleep out for a resource consenting later next year to put on a shower, toilet, and kitchenette. So while it's being built, that's the best time to put in the plumbing, even though the plumbing's not going to be utilised for at least a year. So that's what's happening today.
So have you got a beverage?
I don't.
Oh, David. Where do we get these guys from, Richard? Where do we find them?
I'll be right back.
No, Richard's gone to go and get you one. He has. He's gone to get one.
He's clearly not at a West Auckland car dealership.
No,
because someone would have simply just thrown him one by now.
Most dealers just reach under the desk to the fridge that's in between the drawers.
Right. Anyway, while he's doing that, let's pull up the next story. Auto Logistics marks 100,000 vehicles moved in 2023. If you're wondering why it's been so hard to get a car and a truck at times, this is why. They've just had so much to move this year, and it's been a busy year for the poor guys who truck your cars all around the place. Auto Logistics is celebrating a major milestone with 100,000 vehicles moved off Port of Auckland in 2023. The company, which is part of the PTS group, achieved the result in December, and it represents a new record, surpassing its previous best of 81,000 vehicles in 2021, and a substantial increase of 40% increase from the volume transported in 2022. Auto Logistics Chief Executive John Kennan says 2023 has been a breakthrough year for the firm. With the expansion of our national vehicle storage capacity to 90,000 vehicles, we have significantly enhanced our service capabilities. So that's a lot of vehicles. A heck of a lot of vehicles.
As I understand it, Richard, the transport market in New Zealand is now, it's effectively David, stop moving your beer around, mate. It's effectively two operators, isn't it? Or two main operators. We're down to two because there's been a substantial contraction via acquisitions and mergers of the businesses over the years. We don't have two effective players in the marketplace. I mean, there's little smaller operators too, but there's effectively two large players. Is that right?
Yeah, well, these guys, so it's PTS, so the Palms North-based.
Yeah, PTS and CDG.
CDG, yeah.
That's it.
CDG, of course, have the massive facility out by the airport. Yeah.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
Yeah. So definitely, it's contracting. I think also the ones that are there are doing more, I think, than they did in the past. I know CDG does a lot of. I think they can groom and deliver and do all sorts of stuff now. So yeah, interesting to see how that market's been changing. Yeah. Now, what are you drinking, David? Stella.
Break to the Stella out of the fridge. Good on you, mate.
Nothing like a breakfast beer.
Christmas cheers.
It's always 5 o'clock somewhere in the world, right?
Well, I've been up for a little while doing all sorts of things. I've had breakfast. I can actually crack a beer right now.
Definitely the way to go. Good way to start the day. Yep.
Exactly.
Daycare drop-offs dealt with, so I can do whatever I want now. On to the next story, and we've seen over the last year, it's been a year or so, it's been a real period of change for the trade organisations. We knew changing the guard at the MIA, changing the guard at VIA. MTA changes their head every couple of years, so they're kind of part of that as well. And then we now have a changing of the guard at the LVVTA. Low Volume Technical Association Operations Manager Ken McAdam Wright is taking over the Chief Executive role on January 1 next year from Tony Johnson, left who is concentrating on other LVVTA work. Johnson has been Chief Executive for 21 years, and McAdam will become only the fourth Chief Executive in the association's 31-year history. He joined the Incorporated Society in 2015 as training officer, becoming operations manager in 2018, although his involvement extends further than that, having represented at the New Zealand Four-Wheel Drive Association of the LVVTA Council more than 20 years, and more recently serving as an elected LVVTA board member. When the Ministry of Transport was preparing to introduce new vehicle standards regulations in the late 1980s, then 28-year-old Tony Johnson, on behalf of the New Zealand Hot Rod Association, presented the concept of a self-governance model as a better alternative to what the government agency was proposing to implement for modified and individually constructed vehicles. So question, does the LVVTA still work pretty well? I mean, is that still a key part of the whole industry process?
So from the used sector, I suppose, I mean, look, yeah, Tony's been around since pretty much forever, and you might find time to go and get a haircut now that he's stepping aside from the role. But yes, so if you look at everything ranging from the modified vehicle sector, we're looking at disability vehicles. I mean, obviously, it breeds its roots from the hot rod modification issues. And I'd say that done a stellar job in promoting the requirements of safety around that particular field. Tony's done a really, really good job. So, but yes, they're still relevant because there is always going to be a call for vehicle modification, vehicle certification around modifications, and finding what we'd call safe parameters for government to be comfortable in that are freeing up, if you like, the resource of NZTA to do other things rather than effectively inspecting somebody's hot rod. I think it's been a really well-structured organisation. I can't speak for the politics of it, but there's certainly a role for it going forward into the future.
They're not short of work, is my understanding, and I don't think they're going to be short of work. There's a range of vehicles that do get modified that are just not purpose-built hot rods and customized vehicles, and the LVVT is a very strategically important part of the sector. I think just reflecting on the length of Tony's tenure, there's something about automotive industry and longevity in the role. Amy's only the third CEO of the Motor Industry Association. I was the second after Perry's very long tenure of 26 years, and I did 10 and a half. So the industry is full of people who have got good technical knowledge and good historical knowledge and institutional knowledge, and every time that changes, there's a little bit of a hiccup in transferring that institutional knowledge. In this occasion with the LVVT, I think what they've done is by promoting somebody from in-house and keeping Tony on in another role, manages that transfer for what is a very strategic and important group within the automotive sector.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's
a good point, David. Knowledge is everything in this sector, and automotive probably more so than virtually any other corporate background you can think of, where long-held knowledge accumulated not through books but just by actually living and breathing the industry is critical to so many. If you look at Malcolm Yorston, for example, in VIA, Malcolm's work spanning across decades. You can call up Malcolm with a technical issue that might have a background of 25 years, and Malcolm just straight out of the file up here. Across all the organisations, it makes what I think, anyway, really good, sound processes of both decision making and also advice to government and other bodies because it's lived and breathed.
Yeah, I know when I stepped into the MIA role in 2013, the number of times that I had to call back on my knowledge from even my days at Maritime Safety, but certainly at the Ministry of Transport, a decade earlier. Longevity in the automotive sector just pays dividends, and it's good to see.
Right. Now, let's move on to the top 10 most popular stories of the year from AutoTalk Web. Now, to be fair, there might be other stories that are in magazines that were more popular, but this is from the internet, which is where we tend to operate this one from. Now, should we start with number 1 and work to 10, or number 10 and work to 1? I'll let you
No,
pick.
10 to 1. Always 10 to 1.
Always
10 to 1.
countdown.
Okay. Now, you're going to find a bit of a pattern in this top 10. You'll
Really?
you'll see what I mean. There's definitely been one topic that's dominated this year. I've got the burps from the gassy drink. That's
Already?
Do we put a little sweepstake on what it is, Graham?
I was going to say I did $5 on the first one. Look, no, just surprise us. Go on. Richard's quietly getting drunk in the corner on half a bottle of beer. So.
That's me in the corner. Right. Let's start now. Government confirmed this is the 10th most popular story of the year. Government confirmed CCD to end December 31. Repealing the clean car discount scheme by December 31 has been confirmed by the new national-led government as part of its promised 100-day plan. Confirmation came as Prime Minister Christopher Luxon gave his first post-cab press conference on Wednesday. New Zealand has voted not only for a change of government, but for a change for policies and a change of approach. And our coalition government is ready to deliver on that. So, yes, that was the first kind of hard line. They previously promised that they would end it. And this was them finally saying, we're going to try and get this nailed quickly. Pretty obvious that was going to be in the top 10, obviously.
And, it hasn't been, it has been, I suppose, from a compliance perspective, there's been lots of scrambling around the edges, but we all knew the decision was going to be made. It was just simply a case of implementing it. What's the date going to be? And is it going to be a hard and fast cutoff for applications post that date? And you could argue and say that it would have been nice for a bit more warning, but let's face it, if you're any good at reading the tea leaves in the business, you knew post-election whether you should be buying cars in Japan to suit or not. And if you didn't, or you got caught, then it's either a very unfortunate series of logistical events, or you took a chance and you lost. So all the leaves
people
up,
knew when they pledged it a long time ago. So,
and the government, and to be honest, the government nailed it, locked it tight.
Yep.
Wham bam, done.
Yep. Right, number 9. Dealership cadet very shaken following carjacking. The brazen theft of a 2016 Mercedes-Benz C250 AMG from Cars R Us is a clear sign that, quote, things are getting out of hand, says its dealer principal. We had a guy come in saying all the right things, and one of our young cadet salesmen went out for a drive with him, and the guy threatened to assault him if he didn't get out of the car. They said they never let people go on test drives without one of the staff going with them, adding that they've never had this happen before. We've got a test drive route. However, this would be by, said he had to drop something to a friend 10 minutes up the road. That is probably the biggest clue I would have thought in it. Who goes and runs an errand on a vehicle test drive?
Oh, we've had people do shopping on test drives and come back with a boot full from Pack and Save. We had somebody once, no kidding, did a firewood run. So the back of the car was full up with firewood chips and bits and pieces. I don't know how that got there. I got no idea in the last hour and a half that I had the car. But a more important question on this story is, in terms of follow-up, was there follow-up? Was this nice young man who went to go and visit his friend for a cup of tea, was he apprehended? Do we have any follow-up on that? He was?
Yep.
Did he get a, smack on the hand? Or what was the story?
I don't have the outcome in front of me because I've only pulled up the actual top 10. So,
right.
People are more interested in happening than anything else. But yes, no. Hopefully, well, I guess the new government's indicating a lot about being strong on crime, so we'll see what they do. Hope they've given the police a chance to kick a few skulls, maybe. Not saying I have any great opinion on law enforcement, but maybe I do.
I've got a lot of time for Mark Mitchell personally. I know Mark pretty well, and I think both of you probably do as well. So I'd say if anybody can actually wave the big stick around that one, then possibly Mark is the right person to be doing it.
Yes. So someone who's done security in Afghanistan's got a reasonable chance of getting a few little hood rats in line, I suspect. Now, a relatively recent story that went straight into the top 10. Sir Colin Giltrap recovering after serious fall. Giltrap Group founder and industry leader Colin Giltrap has suffered a serious fall and is now recovering in the hospital in London. The 83-year-old businessman suffered broken ribs in the fall, but is now said to be recovering. Hopefully he's further along there. I understand both his sons are with him up in London now. And we hope that Sir Colin has a great Christmas with his family at home, hopefully, rather than in hospital. Quite the industry icon there. Now, number, what's this be? Get my 10, 9, 8, 7.
Well,
Number 7.
7.
Yep.
I'd rank this one higher.
Dealer staff ditches vehicles to escape Wairau flooding. The brand manager of one Wairau Valley dealership was forced to ditch his car on Wairau Road to escape the flooding that caused millions in damage and took multiple lives on Friday. AutoTalk was aware of at least 3 dealerships on the strip that sustained damage from the deluge: Tristram MG, Archibald and Shorter, North Shore, and Continental Cars BMW. Tristram MG brand manager Sam Palmer says the dealership was flooded twice on Friday. It was pretty scary at one point, as it was just after 5 and the flooding got quite bad, but then it slowed down, Palmer explains. We moved the cars back as fast as we could, but then there was a second downpour, a massive one, and we decided we had to get out of there, he says. I was driving down Wire Road and I had to leave my car there. I didn't get home till around 11 p.m. Palmer says a number of vehicles they were unable to move says a number of vehicles they were unable to move were affected. They've been identified and they're waiting for insurance assessors to attend. Down at Archibald and Shorter, water into the yard and to a low level in the showroom. Of course, the photos of that went a bit viral, I think. And then the showroom at Continental Cars BMW also was flooded. Interestingly, the TikTok is unavailable there. I understand the dealership may have nudged the staff member who posted it to get rid of it.
Nudge, that'd be a polite word.
Yes.
I mean, there were more than those 3 dealerships ultimately affected as well. It was a serious event for particularly Wairau Road. It was interesting that the holding pen for those vehicles was just around the corner from us. There's a bit of real estate that used to be it's basically an abandoned, what they call it, a greyfields industrial site that all the tow companies used as a storage and assessment point before sending off to the auction houses. And there was a couple of hundred cars there, cars coming in, cars going out. And it's only the last couple of months that site has actually freed itself of vehicles coming in and coming out. So what are we looking at? Nearly 9 months worth of vehicle recovery still going on.
I think they had a little bit of filtering to do because I know a lot of insurance companies just simply accepted every every claim at the starting point. And for one of my mother's vehicles was sitting in their driveway in Mount Albert, and I think maybe the bottom of the back of the exhaust touched the water, and that was considered an insurance write-off pretty much as far as the insurance company went. So I think they probably had to work out what was actually real and what was not. It was part of the job of that. So yeah, we'll see plenty of stuff going into the damaged vehicle process. No doubt. Hopefully it's gone to the appropriate places and not being tidied up and shipped off again.
I'm completely sure it hasn't, all of it.
Yeah, I have a sneaky suspicion that we will see problems arising from this for individuals for years to come.
Do we ever export any of that kind of stuff? I mean, like, I'm looking at that showroom full of Land Rovers. Are there potentially some really nice Defenders and so forth driving around Fiji or Rarotonga at the moment that may have previously been here?
I don't know, Richard. That's a good question.
Yeah. I'd say hell yes. And there's a commercial opportunity somewhere. And it may not be that they're complete vehicles, but if you're a dismantler, there's some very good component salvage in some of these vehicles off to export marketplaces. So they may not have necessarily gone in one piece, but yeah, absolutely. And then again, there's also, can I say, Facebook Marketplace, that bastion of all good and fine automotive selling, where lots and lots of vehicles turning up that just got a little bit tiny, just a little bit damp, but the naughty, nasty insurance company deregistered it. But it's all good. It's okay, bro. I've got this at a cheap price. Can be yours to
brand new format.
Air compliance is about $300, so away you go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So now here comes the pattern. In number 6.
Come on, get to the juicies. Yeah.
Clean car discount cancelled. The details. So it's again another recent story. December 13, Nationals promised to cancel the clean car discount by December 31. Looks set to come to fruition, and we have the details. So this was when it passed. When the Wakatahi released the details of the cancellation of the process. As we discussed before, it was great. They gave a really hard line on this and some really clear guidance on that. That's all underway now. Now, if we go to number
Five.
You're probably waiting for the juicy, naughty dealer thing, but I just don't think there's that much on the top 10. I think that stuff, while popular, this kind of big news kicks its butt. So, breaking, LDV and Sanyong distributor sold to Inchcape. The operations of Great Lake Motor Distributors, the company that distributes LDV and Sanyong vehicles in New Zealand, has been sold offshore. Currently locally owned by father and son team Rick and Dion Cooper, United Kingdom listed vehicle distributor and retailer Inchcape will take over the business. The purchase was confirmed in the statement to AutoTalk from Inchcape, though details remain thin on the ground. This was a long time before they actually announced it. They announced it something like 3 or 4 months later, but my news nose was hot on the trail of it. Inchcape has entered into an agreement for the acquisition of the Great Lake Motor Distributors, the group operations in New Zealand. The agreement is expected to be finalised in H2 2023. We look forward to sharing more about our expanded operations in due course. They, of course, wouldn't comment really at the time other than that statement. We've seen that has happened since. They've merged those operations into what is Subaru New Zealand under the control of the well-known industry operator Wall and they've been making some moves. They've done some price cuts. They've shifted a lot of LDVs and Sangyongs, and be interesting to see what they come up with in the future.
Few cheap T90 EVs in the marketplace there for a while.
There were.
I think what we are seeing is a consummate professional who's been in the distributorship business for a very long time, positioning the two different brands for different segments, different market profiles, but doing it in a really professional way, in a very deliberate way. So I expect to see LDV and Sanyong come back into the market, and it'll be interesting to see how they market those, the marketing type of programs they have around it. But it will be different from the marketing programs they use for Subaru. There'll be a very clear distinction. And for Inchcape, it's quite good because now they've got a range of brands across different value propositions. So it's a very interesting setup. It's one that I'm eagerly waiting to see how it unfolds.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think what we've seen from LDV so far is they've very much leaned it into its electric side. Most of their marketing for LDV has been around the electric side. Similarly, we're hearing, KG Mobility is kind of the new name for Sanyong, and it sounds like they're leaning very electric. Subaru, as with most Japanese brands, isn't. They've got Solterra coming, but by and large, Subaru is going to remain a somewhat CO2 heavy brand for a passenger car brand. So I think having some operations that can bring some CO2 credits to the table is going to be quite good for them. Now, I would like to note on this page, and I'm not sure, can any of you notice something on that page that might be of interest to this podcast?
Well, aside from you haven't drunk your beer fast enough. No, I'm clueless.
Who's that?
Well, it's our good friend Amos.
So he's making his appearance on this podcast.
There was
just noticed that.
It was just too fuzzy for me to understand who it was, Richard.
Yeah, it's the Asahi. Everything's fuzzy now. Okay, Amos is here in marketing speakers. Amos with
advertising only. But exactly. Look at that. They put him on the advertising. That's pretty cool.
Boy, we suck at Easter eggs on this show, don't we?
Now but we succeed at alcoholism.
Yeah. So down to number 4, Richard. Down to number 4.
Number 4, Optimus to acquire Australian new car retail group. The Optimus Group, a company listed in Japan with diversified interests across the vehicle and retail supply chain, has reached an agreement to acquire substantial dealer group AutoTalk. With component businesses boasting a 30-year history in the automotive retail market, Optimus primarily operates in the used vehicle export space. The company's two most recognized brands here are Nichibo and Chevik, of course, and Vins, also part of the group, Auto Finance Direct, a few other things. So they bought this. They already had a stake in the Oscar used vehicle operation over there. They own a blue flagged out operation. They bought AutoTalk. Now, AutoTalk is a bit bigger than what you can get in New Zealand. 28 dealerships representing 35 brands. across 3 states. It's in all the vehicle segments. Allows them to accelerate its strategy of growth. Nobu Yamanaka, president of Optimus Group, says that it is our planned acquisition of the AutoTalk business will provide the opportunity to expand our route to market into Australia in line with the growth ambitions and strategic direction of the group. So it's interesting to see why people found this so appealing in New Zealand to read this story. I guess, Nichibo is such a big player here. We're a big part of their business for a very long time. It's an interesting purchase there. Speaking to a few people, I don't think we'll see them make a similar move in New Zealand simply because the dealer groups in New Zealand just aren't big enough. There's probably only one that would be worth their while if they're talking about this kind of acquisition. I understand this dealer group, its turnover is in the billions. And probably the only one that comes remotely close would be Colonial Motor Company in New Zealand. And Colonial seems to be on a pretty good path in regards to the family ownership and continuing to be there. So, yeah. Did you find this one interesting, Graham, as a Nichibo customer?
Yeah. Okay. So first and foremost, in New Zealand, I think the interest comes from, as you said, people are interested to see what our primary suppliers are up to and also what that means for them in terms of future strategy. Does that mean, and these are not my thoughts, but from a dealer's perspective, are they thinking, well, okay, does this mean to say that New Zealand is falling away in interest? Are they going to commit some of their resource to Australia instead? Does it mean that they're going to be competing with the Australian market for supply of stock that is supplied by Optimus? Because, of course, one of the questions being talked about in Australia was, what does this mean for the used vehicle sector of imports going into Australia? Because one of the key issues that the import industry has faced is the not just hesitation, but the outright closed door approach that the dealership network, the franchise dealers in Australia have towards having grey imports, as they call them, on the yards. But that model now has changed with at least 28 dealerships in Australia now having access, if they wished, through their parent for the supply of used vehicles from Japan or from other markets to supplement their Australian stock as well. So it's not a game changer yet, but there's a lot of mutterings about what that could mean. And so you talk about why the story was so popular. If you're in Australia, you're wondering if this might be, it might be both a combination of competition, but also a way in that we can all follow. And if we're in New Zealand, you're probably concerned a little bit about what it means for your acquisition of stock that would normally be New Zealand oriented, whether the focus goes into Australia. And these are questions I don't necessarily have answers for. They're not my questions, but I think the trade is very interested to see where this will go.
Yeah, I took a slightly different view, but mainly probably because I'm a little bit more of an outsider in the sort of area that they operate in. I thought it was a rather smart strategic move on behalf of the company to get into a footprint into Australia. The used car sector in New Zealand is more open in terms of rules and regulations, so your primary route into the New Zealand market just was the importation of used vehicles from Japan. It's not so easy in Australia, as you know. Their rules and regulations are a bit different. So to get a foot into Australia as a base, having a dealership program that gives you your bread and butter, your turnover, your presence, gives the company an ability to start to trickle feed and grow that business if they so wish. So I thought it was very smart. New Zealand's a maturing market for used cars. And if you want to continue to grow, there's not a lot of growth left in the New Zealand market for the company. So you go elsewhere. So they're supplementing the New Zealand market now with the Australian market. And the Australian market, of course, is 10 times bigger potentially. So it's a very clever, very strategic, and I think a well thought out maneuver. And the best way to do it, if you want to go into the Australian market, is from a dealership base. Buy a set of dealerships. Therefore, you get the control.
Yes,
exactly.
Very clever.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, they could literally start putting little used import lots on those dealerships if they really wanted to. It's it's a base. Right, now the pattern continues in our next story. National Act reaffirmed plans to cancel the clean car discount. Do you feel from reading this like dealers were really excited about the clean car discount being cancelled?
Well, it was not the most loved scheme amongst much of the industry, to be fair, but then I think the reason why it's so popular is because it's an essential set of knowledge for your business and business planning that you had to know up to the minute what was happening and whether there was opportunity. So, yeah, it wasn't so much a case. It was not like the bad dealer stories we run or the previous story, Optimus acquiring dealerships. This sort of stuff directly affects the decisions you make next month, next week, in some case tomorrow. What stock do you acquire? What do you hold? What do you forward order? And so having up-to-date information as quickly as possible to act upon is the reason why you're seeing these stories popular. It's beltway stuff, but it's critical beltway stuff.
And to be honest, both the Clean Car Standard and the Clean Car Discount, those two interventions, government interventions, have had the biggest impact on the way in which the new and used vehicle sector operates compared to any other single interventions in the past. So it's a massive change to the market. It completely dictates the way in which forward orders and planning are done. It has huge implications for balance sheet and debt and managing that from a planning to ordering to selling process. So anything that says we're going to change it, immediately industry's ears pick up and say, oh yes, by how much, by when, what does that mean for us?
Yeah. Right, now on to the second top story, and one that totally out of step with everything else, right out of the kind of almost dealer space, to be honest. The DIA investigates car dealers' potential illegal gambling operation. Rangiora-based registered motor vehicle trader Wairiki Elroy Jones is being investigated by the Department of Internal Affairs for potentially operating illegal gambling. According to the press, luxury cars and a large motorhome Rangiora have been seized from Jones LRC Limited amidst the DIA investigation. He's registered as a car dealer. Basically, what this is, there he is there with the DIA putting a Skyline GTR on the back of a truck. This is one of a number of businesses that have popped up, basically selling lottery tickets for cars and other items. Now, they all pitch themselves as being you're joining a club or it's part of a promotion, blah blah blah. But fundamentally, they're all lotteries. And he was the first one to get pinged, and I suspect because there's a lot of other ones out there, and I suspect they're probably going to in turn get pinged as soon as his case goes through if they manage to get him. I think he's being used as the test case. He's still, I think, awaiting trial and, moaning on his Facebook page once in a while and putting up random videos complaining. I think he's selling the Free Jones Motor Company T-shirts at the moment. But you jump on Facebook and it seems to be about 50-50 people who really liked it and people are like, dude, you broke the rules. Deal with it.
I recall in my time at the Ministry of Transport 15 years ago, people asking me questions about this, and the Ministry of Transport and DIA were really clear back then. There are rules around how you run lotteries, and if you don't follow those rules, you're going to get smacked over the wrist. I can understand why people follow this, and I can understand why they've got a lot of people who think it's a good idea, because on the face of it, it's a brilliant idea. But you've got to set the basis up right. And if you don't, well, you're going to get smacked. And I think in this case, I don't think he's got a hope in hell of winning this case. I think it's
the second he falls, the others they'll have a precedent, and the others will fall. And the interesting thing about that is they went after him very aggressively in regards to seizing assets at an early stage. So if you've got someone coming along, because this guy ran partnerships too with some prominent new car dealerships down in Christchurch. If you're selling vehicles to people running these kind of lotteries or working with them, just be very aware that one day, like this guy had, Department of Internal Affairs and the police could turn up, put a lock on his gates and all the cars on the tow truck, and they might not have any ability to pay you. I think they seized all his money as well, seized all his bank accounts. So, just one thing to be aware of if you are doing that. Now, the number one story of the year. And I think we should all take down.
I'm going to sort of write down what I thought it was. Hang on. Oh, my writing is terrible because I've had a beer. But I've written it down. Okay, so I've got it in front of me here. I've written down my answer. David.
Okay, David, you're gonna write. Well, David. What do you think it is?
National and clean car discount.
Graham.
Optimus buys Trade Me. I mean, not Trade Me. Sorry, Auto Trader. God, Trade Me.
Hey! There's a thought.
Insider trading.
Because no, look. Let's be blunt. Trade Me. The owners of Trade Me have very much said that they bought it to sell it. So who knows?
Yeah. Okay, so there's my Optimus buys Auto Trader.
Right. Before we reveal this, I think we need to take a big swig of whatever you got in front of us. Let's just toast the news of the year before we reveal the top 10. I'm going to go with the rum this time.
Or it could be too cheap, but. Well, we talked about it enough, didn't we? We spent half of 2023.
The too cheap stuff didn't rate that well because it had no real impact on anyone. You'll notice most of these stories have an impact on people. No impact on people. And I think after 3 years of it, people were just sick of two grown adults squabbling over a big company.
It was nice bickering on the side to have a snigger at.
Yes, exactly. Well, I'm going to push the button. Drum roll, please, Graham. And you're wrong. David Crawford was right.
David was right.
National pledge to end clean car discount December 31. National Party has added more flesh to its promise to can the clean car discount, confirming it will end the scheme on December 31. This year, if elected government, the party is long committed to kill the policy and the so-called ute tax, and it is now added the date alongside a new $257 million proposal to deliver another 10,000 public EV chargers by the end of the year. So, of the top 10 stories of 2023, 4 of them were the same story.
So
good advertising
really top
for
10.
The National Party.
It was top 6. But it's interesting, isn't it, as an industry that we were split. Clearly, that's been, as David said, this is such a huge focus of the industry now. And possibly, maybe overlooked, I think, perhaps, even by us on the show, by just how much impact it's had in the daily way that we operate. I mean, there's not a dealer in New Zealand right now, I think, thinking about what's going to be happening about 3 or 4 days in their dealership and their marketing and their online marketing and the sales material they produce, because all these things have a lot of work in the background to be done. And I sure as shit think that NZTA are not paying for my photocopier paper and my time to go and modify stuff. But it does. The downstream effect is huge.
It is. And I know from my time sitting in the hot seat at the MIA for the last 3.5 years, it occupied over 50% of my time, and at times up to 80% of my weekly hourly allocation. It's just huge, and the amount of background work required to understand it, to get into the detail, figure out its impact at both a macro and a micro level, then provide advice to the members of the association, have discussions with other trade associations like VEA and the MTA, and try and get a collective response. It's enormous, and it is very invasive as a set of policies. So we've seen the clean car discount this year. My prediction for 2024 is that Simeon will have to now look at the clean car standard and the targets, and that also, when that breaks, will become a really big story because of the potential impact, again, that it has on the bottom line of businesses. And for the used car sector, the clean car standard is a little easier to manage because the timelines are further out, or it's done on a purchase by purchase model. But for the new car sector, it is a bigger impact because it's all about their forward planning, their 6 to 9 months, and then their product cycle and how they manage that product cycle, the rate at which they transition to electrification or low emission technology. And the targets for the clean car standard at the moment are just manageable, but if they are not amended, they will become unmanageable really quickly. So 2024 is the grace year. After 24, it bites, and it bites severely. So that'll be the next big thing, in my view.
I think CCS is also not well understood by the used sector, David. I think the new, obviously, there's a lot more effect for the reasons you just stated as to why it's so important now to the new sector. But used guys, most of them have no idea downstream what it actually means. Not a clue. If you ask them what it means that they're importing in 2025, they shrug their shoulders. They've got no idea. It's very much a case of what can I do today? And the effects aren't really being seen. We don't have the benefit, if you like, of needing to forward order stock for the next potentially two or three years with the model cycles. But on the other hand, if it's not modified, then 2025 could come with a cold, hard slap to a lot of importers. I had no idea.
That's right. Well, but the penalties start to get to be what the current fees are on the clean car discount. The clean car discount is a lot easier to understand for the used car dealers because it's at a vehicle by vehicle standard. The problem is for the clean car standard. It for used sector can also be car by car, or it can be on another basis. It can be collectively. But it is something they're going to need to get their heads around. And I know that the new CEO of VIA has a fairly good understanding of, as does Kit. So it'll be an area that they'll need to start to focus on and up their communications understanding level. For the new vehicle sector, it is once we get through the clean car discount, that will become a focus of Amy and the team there on how they think about what the targets should be amended to and what the rate of carbon CO2 emissions decrease should be. But one thing we are all certain of is that the rate is far too severe, far too quick. It's a sprint and not a marathon, and we need it to be set in between those two sort of parameters. It'll be interesting. Simeon's all over it. I know that he's put a lot of time into looking at it and understanding it. And early in 2023, I had some really good discussions with Simeon about the standard.
Yeah, I think we've got a lot to come. I also think I think this discussion of how we reduce the CO2 emissions of our fleet is not gone. I think obviously we've now got potentially ruck for everyone on the table. Not too many people heard it, but there was this very clear inference from Luxon that they're going to stick to where they can to their the CO2 commitments New Zealand has made. And I think what they're talking about is making the emissions trading scheme basically do a lot of the work, and that could reflect in the price of petrol. We could see additional ETS fees go onto the price of petrol. I've heard figures as high as an extra 60 cents a litre. I think it'll be interesting to see if they push forward earlier on ruck than we think, so that they can basically take everything else off fuel, put ruck onto cars, and then quietly load that ETS charge on at the same time to balance a few things out. So it's going to be interesting to see where we go with CO2 in the fleet over the next little bit.
I agree.
Be interesting to see what the fleet does next year, whether we keep selling EVs or if it's just a free-for-all on utes.
It's going to be different to 2023. That's for certain. There will be more utes sold initially. I think over the last 3 years, the one thing that Kit and I very strongly agreed on and talked about, but understood the political hesitancy why governments didn't go down this route, is that the price of petrol affects people's car purchasing decisions a lot. And before the clean car discount started to take effect, every time petrol jumped in price, we would see a move to smaller cars or to more fuel efficient vehicles. So I still think, Richard, that ruck debate and the way in which you can use differential ruck charges for engine technology and for different, time, congestion, all of those sorts of things, becomes a very powerful tool. The issue is, and I've been banging on about ruck since 2013. The issue is that it takes a lot of time to make ruck applicable to petrol-powered vehicles and to do it in a way where it's transitioned. And that whole move away from fuel excise to ruck for petrol vehicles is not an easy thing to do. And officials should have been working on this for a long time. But of course, they've been diverted onto the clean car standard and the clean car discount. So I think between now and 2030, we will see some fundamental changes in the way in which road fees are paid and how that impacts and affects the type of vehicles that people think about owning and operating.
Yeah, I think the biggest issue with ruck really is implementation. And it's all very well for the new fleet, and should I say that up to 5-year-old, 6-year-old fleet. And again, I sometimes make it out as West Auckland is this sort of lawless band of loosely affiliated gang tribes roaming the streets selling peat on street corners. There's some nice places out here. I live here. I live in Henderson Valley. It's a nice place. But I think for a lot of people that we interact with here every single day, I just can't see them getting their heads around the idea of an additional. They can't even keep a warrant registration on their cars, and it's not just a couple either. How you manage to put together a system that can be understood and utilised by the vast majority, that's going to be the challenge. And I call it the Harbour Bridge syndrome too, is that one of the reasons why they stopped collecting tolls on the Harbour Bridge in Auckland was it was costing about $3 per car to collect a $2 toll. And the danger of ruck is that it becomes an unwieldy monster of a system to capture everything, but it ends up the cost of that almost doesn't justify the means. And those are going to be hefty challenges to work forward. And I don't think they're going to bring the public on board. I just can't see the general public getting on board.
It depends on how you look at it, and that there's broader savings to be made by shifting to a ruck and road pricing system, because essentially you can avoid spending billions on new infrastructure with the leveraging tools you get from a well-run road pricing and e-ruck system. Essentially, it's whether we're willing to get there and whether we're willing to spend the money to get there, and whether how you transition it. That's the trick.
So the challenges with e-ruck is that it's got to be tamper-proof. So there's a challenge to start off with for avoidance purposes. So we know that for fuel excise, the avoidance is very low. For current ruck on diesel vehicles, it's understandably a little bit higher. But the advantage, Graham, is that we're not going cold from fuel excise to ruck for light vehicles, because there are a lot of people who own light vehicles that are diesel, and so there is some understanding and some familiarity with ruck. It's if you then decide to go ruck for all light vehicles, how do you do it? Is it a hard switchover, which therefore means putting a device in that's tamper-proof, and then getting them to understand that actually when you drive on section of State Highway 1 between the Bombays and Hamilton, that e-ruck measures that distance, and then all the money that you're paying through that will go to this third-party provider to maintain that section of the road. And then if you decide to commute in this part of Auckland between the hours of 7:30 and 9 a.m., you've got this extra charge. We've seen how fuel excise taxes, the Auckland tax, was very unpopular. So the whole aspiration around government officials looking at e-ruck is the ability to differentially charge. And then, but the problem is, and I used to be a student of economic instruments for environmental management, and charging and pricing is quite an important tool for that. But it's the visibility and the way in which any system is understood by the end person who's paying the charge to be able to then modify the behavior that you want. That's a really big ask. And the challenge, and I've been very clear with this in the past, you take the average reading age for a newspaper, when people write stories, you know this, Richard, what's the average reading age that you pitch at when you're writing in a main paper like the Herald or Stuff? It's about 12
Pretty
years
low.
of age. And therein lies the challenge across our societies. Having any systems that have a degree of complication, you start to leave big sections of the community behind because they can't get their heads around it. So any communications have to be clear. And so far, all of the interventions we've seen in the transport space around CO2 reductions have addressed the buyer at the time they buy the vehicle, i.e. the clean car discount, or the importers and dealers through the land transport rules or the clean car standard. And so there's some monumental challenges ahead to change it. But I think we will see some behind the scenes changes. So if you make the emissions trading scheme carry the bulk of the heavy lifting, to do that, you alter the fuel price. Everybody understands fuel price. When the fuel price goes up, you don't want to drive as much. There are some disadvantages because of the inflationary pressures, but it all equalizes out. And then there's the elasticity of price that often means that once it jumps up, a year or 18 months or 2 years down the track, things start to go back to normal. So it's not a foolproof system. So very interesting times ahead.
Yeah. Glad it's not us deciding, though I do feel like we could for instance run New Zealand. I mean, let's face it. The three of us, we just run the industry. Yeah.
I'm
Who needs
retired.
simming in when you got Richard, Graham, and David?
Applying from the sidelines.
So pop quiz for the pair of you, because you're both numbers guys. In an average month, how many what we call utes are registered in New Zealand for the first time? What's that sector, Richard? Come on, you're the numbers guy.
In a non-clean
just
car
an average
discount period, about 5,000, David.
And in a month, what between new and used? Oh,
no, just new.
First
Ranger,
time
Hilux, Navara, Triton, that sort of stuff. How many?
Let's ignore a clean. Let's go back last year before. Go back before clean car discount. About 4.5, 5,000.
No, used to average around about 3.5.
Okay,
about 3.5. As I say, because that'd be an awful lot of non-rangers, given they're the biggest. So, okay, so what are your predictions of the numbers in January, guys?
10,000 utes.
I think the highest we've seen was about 5.5. I reckon we're going to get close to. I reckon we're going to get close somewhere between 5,000 and 7,000.
Yeah. The reality is you've still got to deliver them, so there's still limits on what you can actually bung out the door. But it's going to be a very busy 3 months. Put it that way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
it certainly is. It certainly is. And I think probably as we're counting down, not only in terms of the show, but also as an industry. There's been far more attention, I think, paid to the new vehicle sector about those rebates or the fees than there has in the used sector, because we just don't have the same sort of impact. I've got to say that looking out there right now, the rush of people queuing up to buy Aquas for their $1,000 rebate has not been nearly as significant as I thought it would be.
And I'm hearing the same thing in the new EV space, because I think people just don't have the money.
No, it's very tight out there, and I've been hearing for the last couple of months that current decisions for buying new vehicles has been slowing down, and it's largely been the back orders that have been fulfilled that is driving it's the supply of back orders. But I do expect December to be for the new vehicle sector. I wouldn't be surprised if it's probably one of the strongest Decembers on record. And I expect to see January definitely the strongest January ever on record, but for different reasons. Utes versus low emission,
and then after what they are will invert.
Yeah,
it'll complete inversion.
But by March, I think the numbers of new vehicles sold is going to go down and stay down, and I don't think 2024. The question I have about 2024 for the new vehicle market is how big a fall will it be? Because we've just heard some very tough economic views out there, and running a business in a depressed economic environment, you can get through a year or 18 months, squeeze it 2 years at best, but the belt starts to tighten, and some really hard decisions have been made by a lot of business sectors.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, speaking of that, I've made the hard decision that I've finished my drink. So we should wrap it up there for episode 76 of the AutoTalk Weekly Wrap. Thanks again for joining me, Graham and David. Who's back for next week? You're back, Graham. What about you, David?
I'm around, yeah.
Yeah, there we go. So I haven't decided what to do next week. I'll come up with something weird to do next week.
I'm sure we can find something. And I'm going to be popping around the back garden doing all the stuff that my wife says I have to do when I'm on holiday. So
it's a happy Christmas to both of you. Have fun with the family, and time off.
I've got to spend some time preparing for a big New Year's party.
Yes, yes, indeed. I was going to say, as a wider thing, for those of you watching this, God only knows sometimes why you do. 3 old men rambling on about, men having a cup of coffee outside the coffee shop. Merry Christmas to everybody. If you watch the show, really appreciate your participation and you putting up with our opinions. Not always necessarily correct, probably more often than not. But I do appreciate the fact that you do listen. I get a lot of feedback, people that actually do tune in from the industry and watch what's going on. And I really do appreciate that. So, look, have a fantastic and a very, very, very happy Christmas, everybody. Despite all the shit economic news, family. Forget the cars for a couple of days. Let's just enjoy time with our families and friends.
Exactly. We'll finish on that lovely note, and we'll see everyone, or at least those who have internet at their batch, next week.
Yep.